So I just beat Sons of the Forest and left feeling disappointed. I honestly would say that this game feels extremely early access, if not rushed in a lot of ways, because we've got this amazing, beautiful, massive map, and it also has different seasons in it. Like, the attention to detail is absolutely insane, but only like maybe 10 to 15% of the map is utilized in any exciting ways, and the rest of it is just kind of paintbrush forest. So let me start at my beginning experience of the game before we end up getting into the parts that make me feel conflicted. So at the start of the game, I absolutely loved it. I didn't think that I would because I'm not the biggest fan of survival games, but my God, the immersion level with this game is high. You really struggle for resources at first, more particularly food and water, and as you slowly end up discovering these different mechanics where you can end up drinking lake water and, you know, picking berries or hunting creatures for food and then cooking it on a fire, so on and so forth, that is all very, very exciting. On top of that, the island is filled with a bunch of weird cannibal mutant people, and sometimes you'll end up finding a cave, and inside those caves are some of the deadliest creatures in the game. The cool thing is that you can't actually venture too deep into those caves until you either get your supplies up enough that you can go in there and survive, or more particularly, you gotta find a flashlight so you can go deeper, and then you gotta find a gun so you can defend yourself, but then you gotta find ammo and you gotta be very careful with your ammo, and so on and so forth. This is the beginning game loop that had me absolutely enthralled. I was just having so much fun, just exploring and discovering things myself without looking anything up or having any tips from chat or anything. It was just, honestly, so much guilty pleasure was had just exploring and trying to survive. So then the next thing that I tried doing is I tried to fortify my base, and maybe like 25% into this wall that I've created here, I discovered that this is the worst building in any video game I've ever played. Think about building a dirt house in Minecraft, but you can only carry 2 dirt blocks at a time. That's how bad this is. Now, obviously, I was playing this game solo, and a lot of people that are playing this game are probably going to be playing it with multiplayer, but with multiplayer comes a whole slew of other issues, because as soon as you end up having more than 5 players, the game will actually start randomly kicking people. This is obviously something that'll end up getting patched in time, but it stands to reason that you need to save constantly when you're in multiplayer, because for some stupid brain dead reason, there is no autosave. And that's just one of many, many small little inconsistencies that make this game ultimately feel extremely dated rather than polished. And I'm not talking about the fact that it's early access. I'm talking about extremely dated game design, which leads me on to my next point. So as much as I was enjoying the survival aspect of the game, then suddenly crept in the main story campaign, where I was being locked behind these key items that I didn't have because I didn't explore the proper areas yet. The most notable item that you're going to end up missing while you're playing this game is the shovel, because you'll end up exploring and going and finding different points of interest on your GPS, only to realize that you need to have a shovel in order to dig those spots. How do you get a shovel? Can you just craft it? No, of course not. Even though your character can craft a bone chandelier, he doesn't seem to have the basic knowledge of being able to make a shovel. No, instead you have to go to this specific cave so that you can end up finding a shovel all the way at the end. There's a couple other items in there that are points of interest, but generally speaking, you just get the shovel and get out of there. And then you can go up to this hill and dig this grave so you can find yourself the shotgun. And if you don't end up doing that, well, don't worry, there's plenty of other places you can dig up. More particularly, you will end up finding some underground bunkers in some certain areas, which is really, really cool. But once you end up going into those bunkers, you end up finding a key card which will allow you to access all of the other bunkers in the game. And this is where the game started to become problematic. It completely trivialized the survival aspect of the game, because suddenly I realized that I was being rewarded 10 times more by just running to a specific spot on the map, grabbing all the loot out of there, and then running to the next spot. That gave me more supplies than I knew what to do with, versus spending hours foraging and trying to engage in the survival aspect of the game. And as I ended up exploring all of those different labs and bunkers and stuff, it was pretty cool, but it definitely didn't feel like I was playing the same game. It was very, very conflicting in that manner. Usually I would end up being rewarded with a new weapon or tool, but not really anything game changing. It would just be like, oh, this is a better axe than the one I was already using. How convenient. But it definitely made me question, why would I bother building a base or even trying to survive in this game instead of just speed running the points of interest? Anyways, you finally end up finding the final bunker, and lo and behold, you end up actually getting a really, really cool ending. I won't show it, I won't talk about it. It's really, really awesome and was definitely worth the time investment for me to see it. But it also did make me feel like, what? That's it? That's all there is to this game, is I'm just bunny hopping from point to point to try and progress through the game and beat it. And what's the point of the survival? What's the point in building a base? I refer you now to another game that I feel deals with survival much, much better, which is Valheim. This game is extremely immersive and extremely fun, although it's, a lot more fantastical rather than the realism of Sons of the Forest. But the gameplay loop of Valheim is that you have to go into this area that you have to find, by the way. You don't have a GPS pointing you to it. You have to go into this area to get a bunch of gear so that you can prepare yourself to fight the next boss. And then you go and get some new materials from defeating that boss so that you can end up getting prepared so that you can end up fighting the next boss. It's a really, really satisfying game loop. And incidentally, I have never really beaten Valheim just because it's such a really long game, because I get too distracted building multiple bases and just exploring the wilderness, right? Like, the survival aspect to me is much funner than the progression aspect. Whereas with Sons of the Forest, I felt that the rewards I was getting from progression, it just completely drew attention away from the survival aspect. With that said, what's my end verdict? So I wouldn't recommend this game because clearly it is lacking content. A lot of these issues can end up being dealt with over time as they end up slowly fleshing out all of the different areas on the map, right? But unfortunately, this whole, key item progression system that they have in the game, that's baked in. That was an early design choice that they are probably not going to change. And so I'm kind of on the fence of whether or not I would say that this game is going to be worthwhile even after early access content has, come to full game release. Now, lastly, I do have to reiterate the fact that I haven't played this game multiplayer yet. I think that it would end up being so much more fun playing with friends as any video game would be, but it would really make the survival aspects front and center because of the fact that you would want to drag out that game time by just surviving and playing with your friends, rather than just trying to get all the best gear and beat the game like I was doing while playing single player. But that said, this game is still half the price of a normal game, and I still ended up getting 10 hours out of it. So yeah, I guess I would end up giving it, like, let's say a 2 or a 3 out of 5. This game costs the same as Stray, but you get way more enjoyment, way more content, and a much, much longer playtime out of it.